4 days away from the much awaited halving. This is one of Bitcoin's greatest innovations, the fact that we know when production will decrease. We're already told ahead of time. So we have some really interesting guests that are on with us. Look at their beautiful faces already on camera. And so this will be recorded so you guys can view it later, but we have some predictions on what's going to happen, where we're going to go post-halving, where we're going to go on the long term, and just like some price action that you can watch. Also, I'm excited because I know that this group will also talk about the fundamentals. Price is definitely an indicator of value and of how the market is receiving Bitcoin, but the fundamentals are still in place. So let's get started. My lovely co-host Matt here. Say hi, Matt.
How's it going, guys? I'm sure you all are familiar with me. Very excited to bring you a emergency broadcast here. 4 days out from the halving, and Bitcoin has been knocking on 10K's door. So we definitely wanted to bring you guys some content on these exciting times. And the three of you guys, thank you so much for joining us for this special emergency live broadcast of our podcast. But if you each want to introduce yourselves and just let the people know who you are, that'd be great. Thanks again.
So Ty, go ahead. You can go first.
Sure. My name is Ty Blackbird, otherwise known as Titan Inc. on Twitter. I'm the COO of FOMO Hunt. We're building wealth tech for digital assets and commodities and assets in general. So just been doing blockchain since 2018 and happy to be here.
Okay, and Alexandra, we love to have lovely ladies on this chat. Alexandra is actually part of my Toxic Ladies chat, which is a great group in itself of amazing women in blockchain technology. So Alexandra, go ahead.
Sure. So I'm Alexandra. I usually go by Alexandra933 on most platforms. Pseudonymous, I suppose, but everyone knows my last name. It's out there. I am the co-host, or I guess primary host for Advanced Tech Podcast, and we talk to people creating the tech of tomorrow. So it's not just Bitcoin. When we talk cryptocurrency, it is Bitcoin, but it's things such as artificial intelligence, emerging tech, augmented and virtual reality, various other things, and people that have created some of the cool platforms from the beginning. I also wanted to shout out that I'm part of Team Satoshi, the upcoming Halving challenge, or fitness challenge. So that'll be really cool. You can see my Twitter for that. And I'm also part of the Value of Bitcoin conference. I'm moderating a Hacking Bitcoin panel on the 12th.
Very awesome. Cool. And go ahead, Daniel.
Hi, yeah, I'm Daniel Amelli, longtime Bitcoiner, and even before that, I kept waiting for them to invent it. I do my own trading in the cryptocurrency market, and previously traded futures and bonds and stocks and options. And I'm currently teaching online classes about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and cryptocurrency trading. And I really appreciate everything the Bitcoin Center in New York and Miami do. Yeah, and looking forward to visiting people in person again.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Daniel comes out to Miami and hangs out with us sometimes, so he knows how fun it is here.
Thanks, Dan. So yeah, I mean, let's just address the elephant in the room, guys. The halving now 4 days away. I think we might be below 600 blocks to go. Yep, 594 blocks to go. Some incredible volume coming through today. Definitely good to see the volume picking up with the attempt for 10K. Haven't broken over 10K yet. I think the high we hit was 99.70, so
super close.
Only $30 off. But Ty, if you want to pull up some charts and
Sure.
share what you're thinking with all this, I would definitely love to hear your take on everything, man.
Will do. Let me know when you guys can see the screen.
Got you.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just kind of we'll take a more macro look and kind of come in. I'll try to expand this to focus on what we need to focus on. So the main price levels that we're looking at right now, obviously currently we're right at about 9,800. So the big problem is we are getting really overbought on the RSI. And so if you're not familiar with the RSI, it's Relative Strength Index. Best way to describe it is basically it tells you when too many people, or the price is going up too fast. Essentially, it becomes too parabolic. So we're not, we're actually very familiar with parabolic price rises with Bitcoin. It's not a new thing, but in markets in general, it's not necessarily a good thing. But I don't think anybody is going to be have a problem with that. So with that being said, on the weekly, we're not quite overbought yet, but we are looking at we just passed over a big price level, which is about 9,600. So we passed through that resistance, pretty easily. The next price resistance is going to be about 10,200. In between 9,600 and 10,200, there's really not a whole lot of resistance, to be honest, which is probably why Bitcoin has been able to pass through so quickly at this point. And just to come back down to the daily. So the daily is where things get a little interesting because as we just noted, there isn't a whole lot of resistance between 9,600 and 10,200. However, like I just mentioned, the daily RSI is so overbought, it's not even funny. So what this means is that we're probably going to have to see some type of retrace very soon. If we did see a retrace, which it's very likely that we see a retrace either, obviously today or tomorrow, then we'd probably be looking at that 9,600 price level. If 9,600 does not hold up, then we would probably be looking at around 9,200. After that, I don't see Bitcoin crashing past 9,200 until possibly after the halving, but that's where the conversation would start to change, because then you have to start talking about, mining operations. Are they going to start offloading their Bitcoin? But we can get into a conversation about Tether and packs being minted and of course printed off essentially, and see if that's going to make an impact. And I have some interesting theories about that if you guys want to hear about that later. But essentially, these are the main price levels. After that, after 10,200, you have 11,500, and then 13,000, and then after that it's home free. Pretty much between 13,000 and 20,000, it's kind of thin. There's not a whole lot of price history there, so we could just blow right past to 20K and beyond. But we really have to get past the biggest price levels are 11,500 and 13,000. But at the moment, we're on the way to 10,200, no problem.
So potential for clear skies ahead. But the thing I've been looking at is these sell walls popping up around the 10K level. We know that 10K is a huge psychological barrier. Also, that's kind of where the MSM FOMO really kicks in, when MSNBC loves to scream. It looks like there's an $11.7 million sell wall at 10,000 on BitMEX, and a $3.3 million sell wall on Coinbase at 10,000 as well. So, those walls could be fake. But I think we know that 10,000 is an extreme psychological barrier for us to get over. So, do you think realistically we could break through that before the halving?
It's very possible, and this is okay. I guess I could get into the whole Tether thing now, and I'll go ahead and show my screen again so I can show you what I'm referring to.
Sure.
So let's show you the tweets here. So if you're not familiar with like the Tether being minted, and the Tether being moved from the Tether treasury to exchange wallets and whatnot. 2017, there's a lot of speculation that the reason for the Bitcoin price being able to push to 20K was because of the Tether printing. So lately, in the last 2 weeks, we've had a massive amount of Tether dollars being printed and then moved off of those off of the treasury to unknown wallets. Now, this could be like exchange wallets. It could just be it's more than likely exchange wallets, but we don't know for sure unless you, of course, trace the addresses yourself. But what this could mean, and this is obviously interesting timing, by the way. where we're going into the halving, and these tether dollars are being printed now. My theory behind this is there could be possible collaboration between the mining operations and Bitfinex. And by the way, Pax is also part of this as well. So they printed off 7 million, and I think the numbers are over $300 million in tether printed so far. It could be more than that. But basically, the theory is that there could be some collaboration between mining operations and Tether being printed off. Of course, there's never been like a real official audit for Tether, so is the money actually there or not? Nobody really knows. But if it's possible that these Tether dollars are being used to print to push the price of Bitcoin past certain price levels, going into the halving, so that these mining operations don't have to sell off as much as they normally would, because keep in mind, their profits are going to essentially be cut in half, in an instant. So that's kind of my theory there.
Yeah, so the theory of things being cut in half, right? That is kind of what makes this exciting. It's the supply and demand curve. The supply is being decreased. And what's beautiful about Bitcoin is that the miners and the people that are verifying the Bitcoin blockchain, they know, and they've known that this is going to happen, so they're preparing for it. Now, Daniel, what do you think about that? Just the relationship between the fact that miners are now getting half of the rewards that they are used to getting?
Well, in a perfect world, Bitcoin's production would be continuously declining. Instead of the halving events. As much as I enjoy the celebration and the excitement and the attention that it brings, the halvings are a point where Bitcoin could be attacked. Each one is a risk, especially until we have a significant stable fee revenue. Right now, Bitcoin is the best positioned of any cryptocurrency to have enough fee revenue to support its own security, but it's still not there yet. And even if people are willing to pay it, when you see things like fees going between 1 penny and several dollars and then back and back, it's not great for miners trying to figure out how much they should be investing in mining operations. But as for miners getting their revenues cut in half, I mean, this should be a known event for them. It shouldn't be something that they're surprised by at this point. But I think for a lot of miners, they're still looking at it in terms of how many dollars out are they getting for how many dollars they put in. And all Bitcoin has to do is double in price for the halving to be a complete non-event from their perspective. And what we saw from the last two halvings was that it went up far more than double in price. So right around a halving would be actually a great time for a lot of people to get into mining in terms of their profitability over the next year or two. The other thing is, right, there's a lot of people who are mining who aren't talking about it because they don't need to talk about it. The beautiful thing about mining is it's like the old joke we used to talk about when I was hanging out with non-cryptocurrency traders, where like, yeah, we just need a magic box, you just plug it into the wall and it makes money. Then you don't have to do anything. Easy. Well, things are never as easy in practice as you might fantasize, but the reality is you can mine, which is that you run your warehouse and you don't have to talk to the media, you don't have to have the press coming in and going, it doesn't need to be inspected. Although some governments are talking about a license for mining. You do not need a license to mine. It's fairly discreet. It can be very remote places. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of people mining because they want to, or because they don't mind mining at a loss, or they have access to free electricity and they don't care to mention it to other people, or because that's the best way for them to try to get a certain amount of money outside of their country. It could be things like that. And I think there's a lot of people that are not, there's some people, again, that are looking for it in terms of dollars in, dollars out. There's people in terms of other things. And there's people that just have really good deals on electricity. So they're going to keep going for it. And then there's also people who want to accumulate as many Bitcoins as they can because they believe in it for the long term. So again, if some miners drop off, the difficulty just adjusts down. We still have a decent security budget for Bitcoin, and it can continue. Where I get scared is, again, if you had a large sustained price decrease, then that could lead to a lot of miners being for sale, which could let an attacker potentially buy them off. I just want to say about Tether. Tether originally said that they were fully backed by dollars. Then they said, okay, well, we're 70% backed by dollars and other, similar securities. And there's really no reason to take their word for any of this stuff. I think it's worth assuming in your models that Tether will fail spectacularly at some point. There's also a pretty decent chance of certain other stable coins blowing up. Whether, I happen to like the stable coins because I think they created a way for people to make decentralized exchanges so we can get away from centralized exchanges. And eventually we'll have some kind of stable coin that doesn't have all these problems that the existing ones do. But yeah, if Tether blows up, that would definitely hurt the price. You could have another thing like March 12th. But as we saw, we came back from that. The price dropped by 50% in one day, and those losses are already gone.
So definitely, I want to touch back on the topic of Tether, but I do want to ask Alexandra, what do you think in terms of what's going to happen with the Bitcoin price post halving?
I mean, that's always a good question. If I had a crystal ball, I believe strongly in Bitcoin, so I think it's been relatively stable for the last year. I got into Bitcoin in 2017, a little bit before I guess with the big price spike. So August, something like that. So this is actually my first halving. So I've yet to experience what happens to price during an halving, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I think long term, it's got all the potential. I mean, right now, if you look at what's happening with the halving, it is essentially you've got fiat, which is quantitative easing. You've got all of this happening, going on, all this money printing, and right now with the halving, you've got quantitative hardening, if you will, which is our money just gets harder and harder. And the fact that we've got a fixed supply, if you look at the fundamentals of Bitcoin, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. To me, it's not about the price. It's about the fact that it's an actual fair currency for probably the first time that we've seen in a very, very long time.
No, that completely makes sense to me too. It's like really what happens with price. Not saying that Bitcoin's going to go to $200, but if it did, I feel like that would be very good in the long run. So do you guys think, and we'll start in the circle again, Ty, Daniel, and Alexandra, do you guys think that it's already quote unquote priced in?
Daniel, if you want to go ahead first.
Sure. I would say definitely not, because again, go out in the street, standing 6 feet away, and ask 100 strangers if the halving is priced in, and what you're going to get is 99 what?
Yeah, that's true.
So again, the efficient market hypothesis is assuming that people have access to all the information, and clearly they don't, right? The pool of potential people who might buy Bitcoin is way, way, way bigger than the pool of people who do own Bitcoin or even have an account already open with which they could buy Bitcoin with one click. So there's a lot of people who are going to be surprised by this. There's a lot of people who unfortunately will decide to start buying when they hear about it on the mainstream news, which is usually not the right time to get in. But there's nothing I can do about that besides try to tell as many people myself now before the hype gets to its maximum peak. So in terms of the thing is, even among the people who know about it, right? They could say, okay, I think the halving will make the price go up, so I'm going to go all in now. Well, if I go all in now, how much is the price going up? Me personally going all in, right? If I think after the halving the price will go to 50,000, if I just buy as many Bitcoin as I can now, that doesn't make the price go to 50,000, right? I'm not a billionaire, so among the people who believe in Bitcoin, even if they all go all in, it's not necessarily going to move the price up to that. Also, as I mentioned with halving, there's still a risk, right? There's a risk that there could be an attack. There's a risk that it won't go smoothly. Even if you think this halving is priced in, are all the subsequent halvings priced in, or at what point does a halving become priced in? Because they certainly weren't priced in from the beginning. We just saw it today with Paul Tudor Jones saying, he's getting into Bitcoin, and those are the people who might be able to actually push this thing to where it should be. But again, people even have an idea of where it should be. So if we get a lot of smart, rich people together in a room and say, okay, where should the halving move the price to? You're going to get all different answers. Maybe some people think that should move it up 20%. Some say it would double it, and some say no, that's good for 50x.
Yeah, no, really good point, Daniel. In terms of what you said, the efficient market theory. There are so many people who just own Bitcoin because they thought it was a good investment and are holding on to it. So they don't actually they don't know that this stuff is happening. They're not buying, selling, or trading. So markets are not efficient. Now, Ty, what do you think? Do you think that it's quote unquote priced in?
Well, I would say, okay, so we have an example of like Black Thursday. I think that's what most people are calling it now, where, the price absolutely collapsed. Now, I don't know why it collapsed. I don't think anybody knows. But what we do know is that since that collapse, the price has pretty much from the very bottom, it has rose 150% in a very, very short amount of time. And this could be because it's trying to get back to the mean value of what Bitcoin is actually worth. And obviously, the other thing is Bitcoin mining operations have pretty much kicked it into like second gear, or actually fifth gear, trying to prepare for this happening. So they're trying to get as much Bitcoin as possible before, of course, their profits get cut in half, because it literally gets cut in half within one block, 10 minutes. So I would say probably not. I would also say, is the dollar, is the dollar losing supply? Absolutely not. I mean, we're adding, trillions of US dollars all the time. So I think what's happening is you have essentially what's happening is Bitcoin is trying to get back to its real value, and I don't think its real value is under $10,000 personally. I think its real value is somewhere between, at least for now, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. But after the halving, what is it worth then? Because not only do you have the incoming supply cut in half, but that also means the inflation rate is now going to be less than the 2% target for most central banks, for their fiat currency, because you're going to be looking at like 1.9 around there. As opposed to what it is right now, which is I'm looking at it right now, it's like 3.82%. So for the first time in history, we're going to see Bitcoin's inflation rate below 2%, which again is the target for most central banks. So I don't think the halving's priced in. And like Daniel said, I mean, does anybody even, like, if you ask 99 people, out of 100, would most of them know even what the halving is? Absolutely not. So that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And Alexandra, I want to bring it back to you, because you definitely, touched on earlier the fact that the Federal Reserve is printing so much money right now, right? So that's super dangerous for us. So do you think, from your perspective, is the halving priced in?
It's tough to say. I think anytime you're speculating about currency, it could go up, it could go down. Don't throw everything you've got into it. And one of the best ways to get into Bitcoin is to buy a few sats at a time, or dollar cost average. There's a number of apps. I think Amber is one, and there's a few others that are good for dollar cost averaging. You can also look at ways to hook up things like Fold.app and just kind of passively earn Bitcoin. I think definitely understand a little bit or a lot about it before investing any significant money. And just remember, it's like anything. It could go up, it could go down. Do you guys hear my sound okay?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Just went really quiet there for a minute. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, I think right now we have an incredible buy-in opportunity. So, if you believe in Bitcoin, if you understand where the price probably should be, and if you understand its true intrinsic value, look at that and, maybe put in some sats, or maybe buy some sats, exchange your fiat money that could be worth not very much. I think personally the US dollar is always going to be around. My friend Haas has a good way of putting it. The US dollar is not backed by anything but the US military. So that's a pretty strong backing. So I think it's always going to be around. It is the world reserve currency. Where Bitcoin will be priced in relative to the US dollar, it's too soon to say. It's only been around for 11 years. So we're very new to the game. I think we should all take advantage of this opportunity that we do see the value in it. And if you do see value in it, throw $10 at it and see what happens.
Dollar cost average for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think Bitcoin's only been around 11 years. We're approaching the third halving. This has only happened twice before prior. So
Yeah.
the next question I want to ask you three is just how different are things today in 2020 versus the last halving, which was on July 8th, 2016. And, I know a ton of people got in around 2017, when the price ran up to 20K, but for a lot of people, this is the first halving that they're ever going to experience. So I think that's an interesting question to look at. Where were we 4 years ago, and where are we at today? Is there different institutional levels of interest? Are even the normies and Main Street investors more interested in that? But Ty, if you want to kick it off with that.
Sure. I mean, well, first of all, 2016, 2017. Obviously there's massive, mainstream coverage, and this is probably, this is probably one of the reasons why a lot of us are here for the most part. When we were first exposed to, the crazy price increase for Bitcoin, I think that I think Bitcoin is, from previous halvings. It approached, like, for instance, like if we go back to like 2015, at the halving, it took around 189 days, until after the halving to break the previous all-time high. For this case, I mean, you have people like Paul Tudor Jones, getting involved. I mean, I don't think that it's an accident that, people like him and obviously institutions. I think, Erica, you mentioned like Fidelity just listed Bitcoin or something of that nature on your Instagram. So I think institutions are obviously taking this seriously. They obviously realize that the money supply, the fiat money supply is not getting any lesser. And like Paul Tudor Jones said, I mean, Bitcoin reminds him of gold in the 70s. We have this moment in time with coronavirus and unemployment, et cetera, and obviously unemployment could be a factor in Bitcoin sell-off in the future. We don't know, but what we do know is that this particular scenario has never happened. Bitcoin was created in a financial crisis, in 2008, 2009, but it's never had to kind of show off its ability in a financial crisis. So now it has the opportunity to do so, and we're going to find out if it's the real deal or not. It seems to be so far.
Yeah, no, very much so. It's like Bitcoin was made for this, right? Bitcoin was made as a form of money that's outside of the control of governments. Japan right now, they used to have caps on how many bonds they could buy back. I think it was like $80 billion. Like, what cap is that? But regardless, they completely got rid of it, right? So just to comment on what you said, the story that I posted on my Instagram was actually a repost from a year ago. So a year ago, Fidelity started they started doing Bitcoin custody. Fidelity has also been mining Bitcoin since 2013. So definitely, you're right in saying that the on-ramps, the backs, right? They didn't exist the last two halvings. They do now. The on-ramps for institutional money to get in and get in quickly is here before. And so it's only happened twice. Let's see what happens. So Daniel, what about you? What do you think? Wait, you want to re-ask the question, Matt?
Sure, yeah. So we're specifically looking from today, 2020, to the last time the halving occurred, which was July 8th, 2016. So just looking at how the current macro environment is different, and also how the current Bitcoin environment is different as well versus 4 years ago today.
Well, this is the third halving for me. But I would say, even though the general public is still unaware of it, at least, there's people I can talk to about it for this one. Certainly it was really obscure, for the prior two. But I expect that it'll be something similar to the last two, in that it's not really going to be that anticipated prior to the halving, and then after the halving, you just simply have a change in the supply, which causes the price to slowly find a new equilibrium, assuming demand stays roughly the same or grows at a moderate pace. So the interesting thing happens, after over time, and then a slow rise leads into the parabolic run. But just because the halving isn't priced in doesn't mean it will go up, because it's possible for the halving to be so anticipated in advance that it still goes down afterwards. That's what we've seen, leading up to like Litecoin halvings, where there's really not a huge amount of Litecoin economy to really support that. So again, people get so excited in advance, pushes the price up too much. I'd say this: I think Bitcoin can appeal to non-rich people who think, "Oh wow, this could make me rich," and then for rich people, they're thinking, "How do I stay rich?" And Bitcoin hasn't been appealing to that crowd yet, but I think in light of the recent actions of different central banks, they are genuinely worried. If they were thinking, "Wow, I have $1 billion, I'll never be able to spend this amount of money in my lifetime, no matter what I do," and then, if the people are talking about, hey, we're going to have a wealth tax, we're going to have negative interest rates, we're going to print trillions of dollars, they really do start to worry, is that $1 billion going to buy me a loaf of bread in the future? What can I do? And putting a very tiny as a percentage of their, funds into Bitcoin starts to look more reasonable. It certainly did for them.
Yeah, definitely the argument right now is being made in pretty high circles that Bitcoin is good because it has a limited supply. And a lot of people say, and no country is immune to hyperinflation, but they say, sometimes, like especially in Venezuela, Bitcoin is not about getting rich, it's about not getting poor, right?
True.
So, Alexandra, I know that you said that this is your first halving around. But just in your experience, do you think that there's any differences between the halving that happened in 2016 and the halving that's happening now?
To be honest, I don't know too much about it. As mentioned, I wasn't around for that. I probably should have researched this a little bit. But I think if you look at Bitcoin and again for the fundamentals, you're starting to see a lot of smart money come into Bitcoin, and quietly, which is very interesting. You're not going to see people that are truly, truly interested, that have the vast capital to put into it, announce it. Nobody's going to do that. That could really significantly affect the price. I don't believe so anyway. I know I've had a lot of friends that invest that are looking to, they're like, okay, I think I'm finally interested in Bitcoin. How do I get into Bitcoin? And they don't want to just buy a Bitcoin. They want to buy a few Bitcoins. So that's a significant enough investment that, the most important thing is to really understand. And I think the fact that Bitcoin has stayed around, it's not just been, a blip. It's not been something that, was tried for a couple of years and then failed. I think the fact that, Bitcoin exists and it's been, sure, it was volatile at the beginning, but now that it's got so much power backing it, I think it's very, it's a bit of an existential threat for traditional finance. So I think even the harshest critics of Bitcoin, even the ones that say, I'm never going to get into it, I'm willing to bet they're probably doing their research.
Yeah, I mean, definitely listen to what the woman says. They are coming in, and they are coming in quietly. Not reflected on Coinbase right now. It is not reflected on any of the charts. So we're going to talk about stock to flow ratio.
Gotta bring up stock to flow for the last question here. Sorry that the image was popping up there. So the final question I have for you three is: do you believe in the stock to flow model? Do you think it's overhyped? I mean, when you actually zoom out and bring it all the way back, to the Genesis block and the past two halvings, I mean, there's definitely some merit to the stock to flow model. The price has it hasn't perfectly mirrored, what the stock to flow model predicts, but it does a pretty damn good job of sticking relatively close to it. And I think Ty brought it up after the next halving. Bitcoin stock to flow ratio pretty much it's not exactly on par with gold, but it'll be under 2%. So I just want to know if you guys think there's merit to this argument, if you believe in the predictions that we're going to see prices nearing 100K in a few years after the halving. I just want to get your thoughts on that, because as we get closer to the halving, everyone's kind of going crazy right now. Picking apart the stock to flow model. And Dan, I did see the Medium post a few days or a few weeks ago about the limitations to it, but just want to get everyone's take on that real quick.
Well, I will tell you that personally, I honestly haven't done much research on the stock to flow model, so I'm probably not the best guy for it. So maybe Daniel could touch on that.
Dan,
Can we hear him? Is he frozen?
he might be frozen up. Can you still hear us, Dan?
Daniel, can you hear us? Oh, he looks very frozen.
Yeah, his video might be frozen too.
They're cutting off our internet, guys.
As soon as we bring up stock to flow, then Comcast is swinging the ban hammer on our internet connection here.
There must be something to it.
so then last question. We definitely, it looks like he's reconnecting.
Well, Alexandra, are you familiar with stock to flow at all?
I'm actually not. Would it be a good time to maybe explain what stock to flow is for your listeners?
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Actually, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let me get the website up for you here.
I do know that this model. I know who created or talks about it a lot. It's what's his name, like Plan B or
Plan
something
B,
like that on
yeah,
Twitter.
100 trillion USD is his handle on Twitter.
I definitely should research more on it though.
Yeah, it's basically just the ratio of new Bitcoins that are being mined daily. As we know, every 10 minutes, there's a new block. So right now, there's 12.5 new Bitcoins being created. 4 days from now, that'll be cut in half to 6.25. And then it's the ratio of that to the existing supply. Right now, I think we're at, 18.3, maybe 18,350,000 Bitcoins, I want to say. We should be somewhere around there.
So
is this accounting? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
No, it's the relationship between how many Bitcoins are in circulation and the production to the cost. So people are saying, one example that people are saying is that imagine if the gold rush was happening right now, people are mining for gold, and about half of the people that were mining for gold just left the market. That would increase. It would keep the demand the same, but it would decrease the supply, therefore making price go up. Right. So you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is this also accounting for the lost Bitcoins that, we assume, like an estimate would probably be somewhere around like 16 million. Is this accounting for that?
I don't think it does account for it. And that's a good point because, most recent estimates that I've seen is that at least 3 to 4 million on the low end are lost forever, just from people forgetting their password, throwing away their private keys. The poor guy, I think he was in London or somewhere in the UK, all his Bitcoins and hard drives in the dumpster. But then there's also a million coins, right, that haven't moved, that are Satoshi's coins. And Craig Wright claims they're his, but more like Craig wrong, in my opinion. But yeah, you're looking at low end 4 million to 5, possibly upwards of 6 million Bitcoin's just gone forever that will never be accessed. So I think a lot of people forget that that's like 1/3 of the supply.
Right.
It's gone.
It's kind of ridiculous.
The website that I had on the screen, 1 in 21 million, there's only 21 million Bitcoins that'll ever be created. There's over 42 millionaires on the planet. Even if every millionaire wanted one, they'd only be able to get about a half. So,
which is why we go to 0.8 out to the right decimal of Satoshis. That's why Satoshis are Satoshis, because we definitely need to measure our wealth a little bit differently. I think that it's $83 trillion right now is the world's like supply of money in total, including everything. Yep. So, last question for you guys, because it seems like Daniel was unable to rejoin. Price predictions. Now, obviously, this is not financial advice to anybody that's listening. This is just our prediction. Please don't get us in trouble. But let's say price prediction of what Bitcoin will be before the halving, directly after the halving, and then let's say 1 year from now, so May 2021. So 3 prices.
All right. I guess I'll go first. Price before halving. I I would probably say this is a good one. I mean, we have like what 4 days. I would probably say somewhere around 10,200. I think that's a safe bet. After having, I do think we will probably retrace just a bit. I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as it was in 2016. So I would probably say after having maybe 9,000, 8,500. Those are some pretty decent price levels. And then you said a year into the future.
Yep.
Year into the future. Oh, I would say upwards of $100,000 for sure.
Let's go.
Yep, for sure.
Let's go, big facts. Alexander.
I'm going to say right before the halving, we'll probably hit like, I don't know, I'd say 9.8 is probably fairly realistic. After the halving, I'd say somewhere between, and this is complete conjecture. This is just from what I've seen, just looking at different charts. Probably 7,200 to 9,000. I definitely think it'll dip. And I think a year from now, I don't think we're going to see 100,000. I do think we'll see that eventually. But I'd say we're probably somewhere between 17 and 20,000, maybe 22.
Gotcha.
Cool. Really cool, Alexandra. Thank you. Now, Daniel, wonderful. You were able to join us again. Sorry we had to miss that softball question. We probably are going to have you on a podcast in the future. Maybe each of you individually. I think you have really interesting aspects that we can touch on. But last question before we go is price prediction. We did the disclaimers. This is not financial advice. Price prediction right before the halving, directly after the halving occurs, and then a year from now, so May 2021.
Yeah, I mean, my price prediction was that we would be getting close to the all-time high by the time of the halving. So we still need to go up another 70% or so. We got 5 days. Anything's possible, but I'm not holding my breath at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think that Bitcoin is going to go into the 6-figure range. But again, was that going to happen, this year, in next year, or in 5 years from now? I don't know. I don't have that exact timeline. Sometimes, things are just lined up. Like you can see that there's a lot of fresh snow on a steep mountain, and the avalanche is going to happen sooner or later. And if you tried to predict the exact timing, you're just trying to get points, basically. So all the pieces are aligned, basically, for Bitcoin to go really high. I think it's a matter of time. Of course, yeah, I tell people, not financial advice, but it is life advice. And I think if someone is using, I mean, as Alexandra mentioned, right, if you use Fold app, or if you use Lolly or something that gives you, now that someone's they're launching a card that gives you Bitcoin back. I mean, if you're not even putting money in, but you're getting a little Bitcoin out, what's the worst that could happen? There's really no downside there. Just like back in the day, there was an actual faucet that was giving out people 5 Bitcoin. If they clicked on and filled out the CAPTCHA or whatever, that kind of thing. It's like heads you win, tails absolutely nothing happens. So I don't see the downside there. It's a very asymmetric bet, and I think the same thing applies to someone who's very rich putting in a mere $100,000 into
it. Absolutely, yeah. Personally, I think if we could get over the psychological barrier of 10K, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to push to 11.5 or 12K. Post halving, we're definitely going to see a correction. I think at least retesting maybe 8.8 or 8,000. Hopefully not back to 6 or 7K, but definitely a possibility. And then a year from now, definitely as the macro environment continues to go in the absolute shitter, the Fed printing 125 billion a day. Now we're borrowing $3 trillion with a T, $trillion, and basically doubling the monetary supply in a matter of months. There's absolutely no reason that Bitcoin will not be at 6 figures a year from now. Is it going to happen the day after the halving? Of course not. But we're in this for the long haul, guys. Like we said earlier, Bitcoin's not a get rich quick scheme. It's a don't go poor slowly scheme.
Exactly.
You're
I like that.
hoarding cash right now. You're literally losing more and more.
What, 3%, maybe more now? Who knows?
Absolutely. And I forget the exact Twitter handle, but someone made a Twitter account showing if you had put in your $1,200 Trump bucks into Bitcoin, what it would be worth today. And as of yesterday, it was like $1,575 or something. So definitely can't wait to keep an eye on that. But
yeah, that's Bitcoin Stimulus. That's at Bitcoin Stimulus. I'm following it. I'm following it now. It just keeps going up, and boy, it's gonna really be amazing when it's like, oh yeah, your $1,200 stimulus is now worth 15 grand or something.
You know what? I want to follow that.
It's great now. Definitely a good laugh. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to this emergency broadcast of the Bitcoin Center Miami radio. This will be available on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Spotify, basically anywhere. Big shout out to the Podtext team. Super excited to be partnered up with them. If you guys are interested in learning about the podcast resources we have available, or if you're interested in having your own podcast, check out podtext.com/Miami. But thank you guys again so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
I know we'll all be glued to the charts over these next 4 days, so might have to tune back in on the actual day of the halving. But thanks again, guys, and stay safe out there.
Happy
Thank
trading.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye guys.